Welcome to our study of Isaiah. We're going to look at chapter 46, verses 1 through 13 in Isaiah 46. Here we see the capture of the Israelites by the Babylonian Assyrians. And here we see God's promise being fulfilled. And so here we see that in verse 1 that Babylonia will fail. It will fail because God is in control. The true God is in control. And they professed the false God. The Babylonians, the Assyrians, believed in a multitude of gods, what we call pluralism. And so they start with verse 1 here. Isaiah tells us that they saluted these gods of wisdom that they were following. The only problem is, if you study their gods, they had no direction from their wisdom, nor did they impart a revelation of wisdom for the people of the Assyrians. And so Baal has bowed down and Nebo stoops over. These two false gods that people had built idols to and practiced idolatry and worshiped them in high places. They were bowing down to the true God because they were being conquered by the true God, the sovereign God, who is all powerful, Jehovah. And so their images of the Babylonians were consigned to the beasts and the cattle. These things that you carry are burdensome, a load for the weary beast. They stooped over, they bowed down together. They could not rescue the burden, but they have themselves gone into captivity. And so in verses 1 and 2, it's really fascinating because they always were portrayed as riding on these animals, and these animals, these dumb animals, were trying to tell them to go one way, and they were trying to tell them to go another way. They couldn't make up their mind and discern which was the right direction. But our God always will lead us in the right direction. And so it's fascinating that they're going to be rescued by God's sovereign control of bringing in Cyrus, the king of Persia, to save these Israelites from their captivity. So in verse 3, Isaiah is the mouthpiece of the Lord again, saying, "Listen to me, O house of Jacob," that's Israel, "all the remnant of the house of Israel. You have been born by me from birth and have been carried from the womb. Even to your old age I will be the same, and even to your graying years I will bear you. I have done it, and I will carry you, and I will bear you, and I will deliver you." So here again, this always insistence, people would only listen to God if you would just listen to me. How do we listen to God? We have to pray to God. We have to communicate with God and then listen to His will. And all the remnants of this house of Israel are going to be protected by Him because He made a covenant with them to bless the people and the land. And He is going to do this from their birth to death and beyond to eternity. He says, "I will bear you and I will deliver you." He's going to deliver you if you turn to Him and you're saved. He's going to go through your life. He's going to be Emmanuel, God with you all the way through your life and beyond. And so He's just saying, and we see this in Jeremiah. Even before you were knit in the womb, He knew you. He had a plan for you. He has a purpose for you. This is who God is. That's our God, the true God. And so He says in verse 5, "To whom would you liken me and make me equal and compare me? What, that we would be alike? Those who lavish gold from the purse and weigh silver on the scale, hire goldsmith, and he makes it into a god. They bow down, indeed they worship it. They lift it up upon the shoulder and carry it. They set it in its place, and it stands there. It doesn't move from its place. Though one may try and cry to it, it cannot answer. It cannot deliver him from his distress. So again, these people made these false gods out of silver, out of gold, and these false images, not the true imago Dei, the true image of God that we were created in as a special creation. And so these false gods don't respond to prayers, to petitions, especially when we're having distress, trouble. And so we have a comforting God that loves us and will listen to our prayers. He might not always act upon them the way we want him to, and he'll do it in his own way, in his own timing, but he does not break his promises. And so he's saying here, why do you put people up on a pedestal? Why do you put these false gods up on a pedestal in what we call high places, and then bow down and look up to these false gods? So he says, remember this in verse 8, and be assured, be certain. Recall it to mind, you transgressors. Remember the former things long past, for I am God, and there is no other. There's no one else like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from the ancient times things which have not been done, saying, my purpose will be established, and I will accomplish all my good pleasure. So again, here we see that God is telling his people, remember, remember how soon we forget. This is what the whole Old Testament is about, is trying to tell people, remember the deeds that I did for you. Remember the promises I made to you. And so you have to see that I was in control from the beginning and to the end and to that which is beyond in eternity. And so he will give us a purpose. My will be done on earth as it is in heaven. He will accomplish those things to his good pleasure. Why? Because we are supposed to what? Please God by honoring and obeying him and glorifying him. And so he will, in verse 11, call a bird of prey from the east, the man of my purpose from a far country. Truly I've spoken, truly it will bring it to pass. I have planned it, surely I will do it. Okay? So here again, he's saying, I'm going to bring Cyrus, a man from a foreign country, Persia, and he's going to help free my people. And so he's doing this. God can work through anybody he wants to. He has a sovereign will that works through people. And so he can work through you for his purpose, for his plan. And so he says in conclusion in verse 12 and 13, listen to me, you stubborn-minded who are far from righteousness. I bring near my righteousness. It's not far off, and my salvation will not delay, and I will grant salvation to Zion and my glory for Israel. Okay? So again, he's making his promises known. You will be glorified ultimately, as well as his people and his land that he established in his plan, Israel. However, even the Israelites were at times, as you've seen, stubborn-minded. He calls this being blind. You are veiled. And so even to today, you have this sense of the Jewish people that were veiled to make them jealous of the Christians who came into God's grafting of his plan. And so he knows that they will, if they turn to him, become saved. And so that goes for any people from any background. And so the whole idea is that these people that are far from accepting God's righteousness will not accept his peace, his love. Israel can be blind, not listen to God, and will receive no blessings if they don't turn to God. But those who turn to his redemption and salvation will be saved and will glorify God, and his people and land will be glorified with blessings. So you have two choices: peace or dissatisfaction in this life and beyond.